The diamond ring sparkled in Amaka's trembling palm like a solution to every problem she'd ever faced. 500,000 naira. Maybe more. Her mother's insulin. 6 months of rent. A chance to go back to university. All she had to do was walk away and pretend she'd never seen it. But her mother's voice echoed in her head, "Don't let your situation define your worth." The choice before her was simple. The consequences would change everything. Sit tight, let me tell you a shocking story. But before we begin, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe for more powerful stories, and tell us where you're watching from and the time in the comments. The morning sun had barely kissed the Lagos skyline when Amaka's alarm pierced through the thin walls of their one-room apartment in Ajigunle. She reached over to silence it, careful not to disturb her mother, Grace, who lay on the worn mattress they shared, her breathing labored and uneven. Diabetes had stolen so much from Grace, her strength, her joy, and nearly all their hope. But it hadn't stolen her spirit, not yet. Amaka rose quietly, her movements practiced and efficient. There was no time for self-pity, no luxury of dwelling on what could have been. The University of Lagos felt like a distant dream now, a chapter violently closed when her father's sudden death 2 years ago had left them drowning in debt. The creditors had come like vultures, stripping away everything except the roof over their heads, and even that was threatened each month when the landlord came demanding rent. She dressed quickly in her faded Jenny canteen uniform, the green apron fraying at the edges. Before leaving, she checked her mother's insulin, counted out the remaining strips for her glucose monitor, and left a small plate of akara and pap on the table. The medical bills were mounting faster than she could count, and every kobo she earned at the canteen went toward keeping her mother alive and keeping them from being thrown into the streets. "Amaka," her mother's weak voice called out just as she reached the door. She turned back, forcing a smile onto her tired face. "Yes, Mama. Remember what I always tell you, my daughter. No matter how hard things get, don't let your situation define your worth. You are better than your circumstances." Amaka nodded, blinking back tears. "I know, Mama. I'll be back before evening. Please take your medication." The journey to Victoria Island, where Jenny Canteen was located, took 2 buses and a Danfo ride, each one packed with bodies pressed against bodies, the smell of sweat and exhaust fumes mingling in the humid air. But Amaka had learned to retreat into her thoughts during these rides, to dream of a different life while her body swayed with the vehicle's movements. Jenny Canteen wasn't fancy, but it was popular. Located in a business district, it served quick meals to office workers who couldn't afford the expensive restaurants nearby but wanted something better than street food. Amaka had worked there for 18 months now, and Mrs. Jenny, the owner, had been kind enough to give her extra shifts whenever possible. The lunch rush was always chaotic. Orders flew from every direction, and Amaka moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing plates of jollof rice, fried plantain, and peppered chicken. She had learned to smile through the exhaustion, to be polite even when customers were rude, to make herself invisible when necessary and present when required. It was around 2 in the afternoon when he walked in. Ben Raphael was not the type of man who ate at places like Jenny Canteen. Everything about him screamed wealth, from his crisp navy suit that probably cost more than Amaka earned in 6 months, to the gold watch glinting on his wrist, to the confident way he carried himself. His driver had apparently taken a wrong turn, and rather than continue searching for wherever he was meant to be, he had decided to stop and eat. Amaka served him personally, noting how he barely looked at her as he ordered, his attention fixed on his phone. She had served hundreds of customers like him, people who looked through service workers as if they were part of the furniture. It didn't bother her anymore. She brought his order, a plate of fried rice with chicken and plantain, plus a bottle of water, and went back to attending to other customers. When he finished and paid, leaving exact change without a tip, Amaka cleared his table quickly. The afternoon rush was winding down, and she still had 3 more hours before she could go home to check on her mother. It was on her way home that evening, as she walked from the bus stop toward Ajigunle, that something caught her eye. The setting sun hit it at just the right angle, making it sparkle against the dusty ground. She bent down and picked it up, her heart suddenly pounding. A diamond ring. Not just any ring, the diamonds were sizable, set in what looked like platinum. She turned it over in her trembling fingers and saw the inscription inside, Ben Raphael, the man from the canteen. The billionaire who had barely acknowledged her existence. He must have taken it off while eating and forgotten to put it back on. Amaka's mind raced. This ring could be worth millions. Maybe enough to pay off all her mother's medical bills. Enough to pay their rent for years. Enough to maybe, just maybe, go back to school. She clutched it tightly, feeling its weight in her palm. Such a small thing, yet it held the solution to all her problems. She could sell it. No one would know. He probably had dozens of rings just like it. Rich people lost things all the time and barely noticed. Who would miss one ring? But even as these thoughts flooded her mind, she heard her mother's voice, as clear as if Grace were standing beside her. Don't let your situation define your worth. Amaka stood at that crossroads for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The easy path beckoned with all its glittering promises. The right path seemed to offer nothing but more struggle, more sacrifice, more of the same endless hardship. She thought of her father, who had been an honest man even when honesty had cost him business opportunities. She thought of her mother, who had raised her to believe that character was more valuable than gold. She thought of who she wanted to be, not just who her circumstances were forcing her to become. With a deep breath and a prayer, Amaka wrapped the ring carefully in a handkerchief and put it in her bag. Tomorrow, she would return it. That night, she barely slept. What if he accused her of stealing it? What if security arrested her before she could even explain? What if he humiliated her? But she had made her decision, and her mother's daughter did not go back on her word. The next morning, after settling Grace with her medication and breakfast, Amaka boarded a Danfo to Victoria Island. She had looked up Raphael Corporation online at a nearby cybercafe, her heart sinking when she saw the gleaming high-rise that served as its headquarters. The building alone seemed designed to intimidate people like her. Her hands shook as she entered the air-conditioned lobby, so different from the hot, cramped spaces she was used to. Everything was glass and marble and money. She approached the reception desk, where a beautiful woman with perfectly styled hair looked up at her with barely concealed disdain, taking in her simple dress and worn shoes. "Do you have an appointment?" the secretary asked, her tone making it clear she already knew the answer. "No, ma. But I have something that belongs to Mr. Raphael. I need to return it to him." The secretary's eyebrows rose skeptically. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Raphael doesn't see anyone without an appointment. You can leave whatever it is with me, and I'll make sure he gets it. Please, I need to give it to him personally. It's very valuable." Something in Amaka's desperate tone must have triggered alarm bells because the secretary's expression changed from disdain to suspicion. "Wait here," she said, and picked up the phone. Within minutes, 2 security guards appeared. They were professional but firm, asking her questions about what she had and why she was there. Amaka explained about finding the ring, about wanting to return it, but she could see they didn't quite believe her. Finally, one of them spoke into his radio, and they escorted her to the elevator. Her heart hammered as they rode up to the top floor. The CEO's office. The elevator doors opened to reveal an even more opulent space, all dark wood and leather and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos. The guards led her to a massive door, knocked, and ushered her inside. Ben Raphael sat behind a desk that looked bigger than Amaka's entire room at home. He was on a phone call, and when she entered, he barely glanced up. One of the guards explained the situation in low tones while Amaka stood there, feeling smaller and more insignificant with each passing second. When the guard finished, Ben held out his hand without looking at her, still talking on the phone. Amaka approached on shaky legs and placed the ring in his palm. He looked at it briefly, nodded, and waved his hand in dismissal, still engrossed in his conversation. That was it. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Nothing. The guards escorted her back to the elevator, and Amaka found herself standing on the street outside the building minutes later, feeling as if she had just been slapped. She had done the right thing, the honest thing, and it had earned her nothing but humiliation. He hadn't even looked at her properly, hadn't seen her as a person worth acknowledging. The tears came on the Danfo ride home, silent and bitter. She had been so stupid. She could have sold that ring, could have changed her life and her mother's life, but instead she had returned it to someone who couldn't even spare her a moment of basic human decency. When she reached home, Grace took one look at her daughter's face and opened her arms. Amaka collapsed into them, sobbing out the whole story. Her mother stroked her hair and whispered, "You did the right thing, my daughter. God sees. He always sees." But Amaka wasn't sure she believed that anymore. She went to work the next day feeling hollow, going through the motions mechanically. What was the point of being good when the world rewarded the opposite? 3 days passed. 3 days of Amaka wrestling with regret and resentment, 3 days of wondering if she had been a fool. And then, on the afternoon of the 4th day, during the lunch rush at Jenny Canteen, he walked in again. Ben Raphael, but different somehow. He looked uncertain, uncomfortable even. He walked straight to where Amaka was wiping down a table and said, "Excuse me. Are you Amaka?" She froze, nodding slowly. "I need to talk to you. Can you take a break?" Mrs. Jenny, who had been watching from behind the counter, nodded her permission, curiosity written all over her face. Amaka followed Ben to a quiet corner table, her heart racing. "I owe you an apology," he began, and she was so shocked she almost missed his next words. "I was on an important call when you came to my office. I didn't realize what you had done until later, until my PA mentioned that you had found my ring and brought it all the way to my office to return it." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "That ring belonged to my late father. It's the only thing I have left of him. When my PA told me the full story of how you found it and returned it, instead of selling it or keeping it, I was ashamed of how I treated you. You showed more integrity in one action than most people I know show in a lifetime." He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, placing it on the table between them. "This is a small token of my gratitude. It's not enough, I know, but I hope it helps." Amaka opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a check for 500,000 naira. She gasped, unable to believe what she was seeing. That was more money than she had ever imagined having at once. But Ben wasn't finished. "I've also instructed my PA to set up a scholarship foundation for young people from low-income backgrounds who have had to drop out of school due to circumstances beyond their control. People with talent and potential who just need an opportunity. I want you to be the first beneficiary. We'll cover your tuition, books, and living expenses so you can go back to university and complete your degree." Tears streamed down Amaka's face, but these were different tears from the ones she had cried days before. These were tears of relief, of vindication, of hope reborn. "There's one more thing," Ben said gently. "I want to name this foundation after someone important. Your mother's name is Grace, isn't it? The Grace Foundation. Because grace is what you showed me, and grace is what these young people need." Amaka could barely speak through her tears. "Thank you. Thank you so much." That evening, when she arrived home with the check and the news about the scholarship, Grace held her daughter close and whispered, "You see, my child? I told you God sees. I told you your situation doesn't define your worth. You defined your own worth through your choices." The Grace Foundation would go on to help hundreds of young people over the years, each one a testament to the choice one young woman made on a dusty street in Ajugunal. And whenever Amaka told her story, which she did often, to encourage others, she always ended with the same words her mother had taught her. "It is good to be sincere and honest. It pays at last, no matter what happens in life. Not always immediately, Not always in the way you expect, but it pays. Because your character is the one thing that can never be taken from you, the one wealth that circumstances cannot diminish. And in the end, that is worth more than all the diamonds in the world. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe for more meaningful stories. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from and the time. We'd love to connect with you.